So I'm going to ask each of our speakers, our community on this stage, to, in about 5 minutes, talk about their own understanding of Africanism and their own entry point into indigenous knowledge. And I actually want to start with Comrade Thand'Olwethu, exactly there on the dominant archives, to then use that as a segue.
Thank you. One of the things that we have picked up in my experience is that there's a type of dominant knowledge that has been developed and has been imposed on, especially on the colonized beings. Even that kind of an idea of on the imposed beings. When we interpret Africanism and Pan-Afrikanism, we always want to look at it from the perspective of what is fashionable, the pop culture, what has been majority influenced by the media. I always say there are two types of Pan-Africanism. There's the revolutionary aspect, and then there's a pragmatic one. Now, the pragmatic one has won the day in 1963, and it has been the dominant one in the 21st century. Now, Africanism, most of the time, we get it from the top, university. But there's Africanism as developed by people whom we refer, in my work I talk about Amaqaba namaqoboka. Now, this Amaqaba namaqoboka dichotomy emanates from the idea that those who practiced Africanism in its essence have been described as non-civilized beings, and therefore they are referred to as Amaqaba. Now, those who then became civilized, educated in missionaries and those understandings, then became Amaqoboka, started wearing beautiful suits and ties, and removed themselves from the ideas of the indigenous understanding of what it means to be African. Now, because of that idea, now Africanism has been seen outside of the indigeneity, outside of the cultural element, outside of the development of a philosophy of an African people and Africans in the globe. The unfortunate thing of this has took Africanism and made it only a political idea. And this is where now the failure in interpreting this Africanism now in the 21st century. And indigeneity or indigenous knowledge of Africanism has been cast to the side. And therefore, if you don't engage Africanism or Pan-Africanism from a political lens, you become less of an Pan-Africanist in the dominant idea, and you become also less of an interesting party in the dominant idea.
So for me, the idea of Africanism and indigenous knowledge supposes that there is a knowledge which is indigenous. There are forms of knowledge that are indigenous, the kind of knowledge that we are yet to fully explore. And in looking at this topic, for me, it was, we are all looking for solutions to Africa's problems. But where are we looking for these solutions? What informs these solutions that we presuppose will be the answer to Africa's problems? I clearly know that when Abelumbi left Europe to come here, they came here in search of medicines and solutions to problems they had created in their own land, where they couldn't live, where they couldn't feed their families, where they couldn't take care of themselves. And they had to leave, get into the sea, and go and eke a living elsewhere. So they had created, out of greed, themselves, amongst themselves, because it's greed, where you can't live with your own people, where you can't feed yourself. It must be that somebody else is taking all of these resources for themselves. So the greed, and the insatiable greed. Just quickly. So I'm talking about that insatiable greed that let them leave where they were in search of medicine and food and ways of living, that they came to us. And when they came, they found the food, they found the plenty, they found the land, but because they are greedy, they decided to stay and infect us. And as we are looking for solutions, we are looking from an infected mind, where we are looking with an infected lens. It is us Africans that are now asking the question, how do we beneficiate ourselves out of the minerals? And who are you to go and cut up Mother Nature and dig out what is in there? Why was Mother created in the manner that Mother was created, so that those minerals are sitting there? Why are you furthering the disconnection with the earth? Why are you the one that's going to dig up Mother and create this sort of imbalance in terms of the energy and the things that ground us? We are the ones that are having this conversation. What informs our knowledge? The greed that they infected us with. Is this really the lens that we want to be looking with? Is this the kind of knowledge we want to be looking at?
In terms of Pan-Africanism, it seems to me like there's a sort of disconnect between our expectations of what Pan-Africanism is and the reality on ground. I come from a society where there are over 1,000 ethnic groups, different languages, all right? How do you say that all of us are the same? What binds us together? So we have this ideology, this common understanding of what Pan-Africanism is, that is sort of divorced from its origins and does not really play to how we relate to other Africans in the real world. So I think for me, there needs to be a redefinition of the concept itself. All right, if we are going to go on with Pan-Africanism, we must first identify what we think unifies us as a continent. All right, what sort of philosophy, what sort of theorizing, what sort of logic would ground a sort of relationship between seemingly opposed groups sometimes? All right, what sort of logic will unite a South African and a Nigerian, for instance, such that there is no conflict between the two, even though there is this understanding of a difference in identity? I'll speak more on that perhaps later on in the talk, but these are two things we need to think about. What can we think about? What do we think unifies us as a continent? Is there such a thing that exists? If it doesn't exist, how do we live as different people in this continent in such a way that we don't have conflicts with each other? I think I'll stop here.
I think decolonization is such a powerful topic, and decolonization in a way of talking about understanding and dismantling the structures that we are all under, and especially the mindset. Like I said in the beginning, I'm very interested in humans and how we function together and in a system. So decolonization for me is also about unlearning, because we have a tendency to want other people to unlearn something. We want, in trade between Africa and Europe, we want people to unlearn certain things about how you should partner on an equal footing and all this stuff. But I actually think it starts with ourselves, and it starts with a mindset, because humans make up organizations or communities or the stage, and human minds and the way we look at ourselves, it kind of also creates and holds up these structures.